Please come in. You're right on time. The door only opens when the clock strikes midnight. Georgia and Hannah are preparing to broadcast from the belfry. Just like this old bell tower, they have many stories to tell. Some old and some new. Follow me up these stairs, but mind your step. Ah, they're waiting for you.
Recording is recording now. Recording.
When I turned my laptop on the other day to finish my notes, when we were gonna record this weekend, my laptop had been completely dead, and I turned it on, and I got this notification about how I shouldn't use my laptop because it detected that one of the fans wasn't working.
The fuck?
And I was like, cool, 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 cool.
Yeah, that's good.
So I've just been using it like on hard surfaces only.
How old is your laptop?
I got it in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. But
Mm,
it was also, it's only like one of those like Best Buy $300 laptops. So
yeah.
the super cheap one. There's nothing really wrong with it. It just has zero storage. So, which is fine because who cares? They make external storage.
They sure do.
So those Italians.
Yeah, what about them?
Well, unrelated. Have you ever wondered what Boston Harbor tastes like? Because I have a theory.
Boston Harbor? Probably tea.
Mm, interesting.
Well, because of the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
I'm following. I'm following. I just
Well,
have
actually, it probably tastes like shit and trash and putresces and such.
yeah, fair. But in my mind, I have a theory as to what it should
Okay.
taste like.
Okay.
And I have to present to you today a classic case of a bunch of historical things coming together for the most random thing ever.
I love that.
And most of this is coming from a book called Dark Tide by Stephen Puelo. Pue
Okay.
Puleo? I don't know. Puleo. Puleo.
Julio.
Puleo? Puleo. So, do you know how molasses is made?
I actually don't.
I didn't either. So, molasses is a byproduct. I feel like molasses is always in the same category as like maple syrup and shit, right? So
Yeah,
like
yeah, 100%.
you always kind of picture that it comes from a tree, but it
Mm.
doesn't.
Well, I probably could have guessed that it came from a tree,
Yeah, well, it doesn't.
or that it doesn't come from a
Yeah.
tree. Jesus
Okay.
Christ. Oh my God.
It's a byproduct of sugar production. So the sugar cane is crushed and boiled, and then the sugar crystallizes, and then like that's taken out, and that's the sugar. And then the leftover syrup is called first molasses, and that's the best kind. That's the kind that you want to use for like baking and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then it could be boiled a second time, and that produces, can you guess, a second molasses?
I'm gonna guess second molasses. Yeah.
And that, I guess, is like not a thing that's marketed or consumed anymore, but it used to be like the shittier version of molasses that you could still bake and everything with. And
Hmm.
then it could be extracted a third time, and that's where blackstrap molasses comes from,
Oh, okay.
which like I know people still use in baking, but it's also the shittiest kind of molasses.
Yeah.
And I guess it's fine if you really want that like very specific flavor. Like I'm pretty sure I have blackstrap molasses that I've used in cookies before. Um, but that has like the very distinct flavor compared to like regular molasses. Um, And it was also used for manufacturing and grain alcohol, mostly rum, obviously, excuse me, but also industrial alcohol,
Industrial alcohol.
like ethanol.
Oh, I was like,
Because
damn, what's that? Get me some. Yeah,
because that
right.
that was more profitable and that was used to make munitions, explosives, and gunpowder. And molasses isn't used for that anymore. But at this time, in the early 1910s, blackstrap molasses was in high demand. And obviously, can you guess it was imported from the West Indies,
Uh-huh.
then used to make rum, and then it was shipped to Africa, and then it was
Mm-hmm.
traded for enslaved people who were
Mm-hmm.
then shipped back to the Caribbean and sold to
Mm-hmm.
plantation owners to harvest the sugarcane that was then extracted into molasses. And that's the triangle of trade. And that
Yeah.
was the backbone of the New England economy prior to the American Revolution. Yay!
Yay.
And the trade was so successful that there was an excess of slaves. So the slave trade was extended to the southern colonies, and that's what led to us being essentially in the situation that we're currently in politically. Thumbs up.
I just wanted to quick mention every recipe I could find that included blackstrap molasses had to do with like barbecue
Oh, interesting.
and like yeah,
Hmm.
like meat related things, not baking things.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch that show on Netflix that was like Bake Off but barbecue? I think it was called The Great American Barbecue Showdown or
Uh,
something like that.
Probably. I've never watched it, but I think I've heard of that.
Uh, it was amazing, and the guy that won, I had a huge crush on him. He was just like the sweetest. He was this large man, and I can't remember where he was from, but his like family heritage was Caribbean, and he came up with like the best flavor combinations, and I would always just sit there like drooling at his food and also like his attractiveness. Uh, anyway, slave trade. Yay.
Slave trade, yay. I learned a
So,
lot about that when I worked on St. John.
yeah, I bet. So, obviously, the colonial economy, I just had this like horrible feeling that I didn't actually start recording, even though I know I did. Anxiety. Yay.
Yay.
Uh, okay. So, the colonial economy was dependent on molasses, obviously. And this is prior to the American Revolution, like I said. So England was like, hey, we can tax molasses to pay off our debt from the Seven Years' War. And that was the Sugar Act of 1764. And this was like one of the many precursors to taxation without representation. Obviously, before the tea one.
Yeah.
But I think that was one of those like straws. This was one of the earlier straws, one of the straws that didn't break the camel's back.
Hmm.
Even John Adams said, I know not why we should blush to confess that molasses was an essential ingredient in American independence. Probably because of slave trade is why we should
Hmm.
blush about it. I get the point you're making, but anyway, fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. Industrial alcohol from molasses was a significant part of all of America's economy, and the hub for the molasses economy was Boston, which was also the center of U.S. slave trade.
Sure was.
So,
Which is strange because it's so north, but
yeah,
yeah.
well, pre-Civil
Yeah.
War as well, I guess. So, obviously, it made sense to operate both from the same city. And the United States Industrial Alcohol Company is like our big capitalist company, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, they're the key player here. And they bought molasses from sugar plantations in Cuba starting in the 1800s. And that molasses was transported by steamer ship to Boston, and then it was held temporarily until the USIA could transport it to their manufacturing facility, which was in Cambridge. And until 1914, only a small part of USIA molasses was used for grain alcohol, rum, but it was mostly used for industrial alcohol.
Hmm.
But what happened in 1914?
A lot of things.
Well, World War One.
I know you were looking for that,
Uh-huh.
but like if you think about it, yeah, there were a lot of
Well,
things
yeah.
happening. I'm also
So
distracted by how fucking itchy my eye is. I don't know what's happening to me. I'm like
yes, seems like
being
you're having a time over
stabbed.
there.
It's like something is stabbing me in my eye.
Did you take a um allergy medication?
No, I don't want to be sleepy.
Well, okay, that's fair. So World War One happens, and the USAI is like, yeah, let's make some fucking money, boys.
Yeah, let's go.
So they started selling massive amounts of industrial alcohol to Europe before the US even got involved in World War One. But it still had to be held temporarily in Boston, and they were renting relatively small storage tanks for this temporary storage. And so they decide, well, we can save ourselves money if we build our own gigantic storage tank for all the molasses we need. So they're like, yes, a 50-foot tall, 2 million gallon molasses tank. Let's fucking go. Who's gonna do
Yeah, that
this?
feels right. 50 foot tall? That's insane.
50 feet tall, 5 stories tall. They gave the job to a guy. I don't know. His name is Gelb. So I don't know if it's like Gelb or Jelb. I heard Jelb on the one podcast that I listened to about this, but
Mhm.
I don't know if that was correct or not. But that's what I'm gonna go with. Arthur P. Jelb. He was a middle manager and he was the treasurer of the Boston USAIA subsidiary, but he wanted to be the VP at the parent company in New York. So he was like, I'm gonna do this job and I'm gonna do it really well and I'm gonna get this promotion that I want.
Hell yeah.
But he was also the kind of guy to cut corners and not
Mhm.
listen to experts if he didn't like what they were saying. Typical man.
I mean, that sounds pretty similar to, you know, now.
Yeah,
But it's also very like, oh yeah, that's the 1910s.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So USIA gave him a very short timeline, which also did not help, to complete the construction because they wanted it done by the arrival of their next shipment, which was due to arrive New Year's Eve, 1915. What happened in 1915? Well, the Lusitania was sank,
Hmm.
and America was like, okay, time to go to war. Because 128 American people were killed in the sinking of the Lusitania, and that changed the mind of people in America to stay out of the war entirely, and that further increased the pressure for the construction to be complete with the US enter the construction of the tank to be complete with the US entering the war. So, New Year's Eve 1915, that's the deadline. Construction began November 19, I wrote 1925, that's supposed to be 1915. So less than 2 months to construct, negative 10 years to complete construction. Less than 2 months to complete construction. And delays began right away. In early December, work was halted when a crew member fell 40 feet from a staging platform into the tank. And then a
God.
superstorm hit New England and brought 20 inches of snow, as well as torrential rains and gale force winds, which halted everything again. Now, Arthur is desperate to complete things as quickly as possible, and this is when he really begins cutting corners. And instead of testing for leaks by filling the tank with water, which was required in the contract, he instead ran 6 inches of water into the tank, which was just above the first angle joint, and nothing leaked, so he declared that the whole thing was sound.
Oh my God.
And
Ah. Sorry.
so the tank was made of 7 vertical layers of rounded steel plates, which were held into place by rows of rivets, horizontally and vertically. And in the construction plan, they had specified a minimum thickness for those steel plates, but the company who made the plates also cut corners, and
Mhm.
they were 10% below that minimum required thickness. So Arthur, when he received the plates from the steel company, either didn't check or didn't care. But the one thing he didn't cut corners on when it came to the tank was security.
Mm.
He wanted a Boston police officer to stand guard 24/7. And he had a good reason for doing so, but it also became a scapegoat for this whole situation. So anarchists had been burning places and people all across the country. And anarchists at this time believed, can you imagine? It's ridiculous. They believed that capitalist forces were working hand in hand with the government to make the lives of the working class poor, miserable, and impossible to change. And I just think that sounds preposterous. I mean, come
That's
on.
that could never happen.
So anarchists are pushing for a social revolution, and it had to be a violent one to break the social violence of the system. And this is weirdly synchronous, but one of the leaders of this movie, his name was Luigi.
Oh my fucking God, that's awesome.
We're truly in a hundred-year
Luigi.
cycle. Um, Anarchists also believe that capitalism and warfare are inextricably linked, so World War I was representative of everything wrong with the world. Again, that's a crazy idea. I don't know where they're getting this from. During the time period that the tank is being constructed, a series of suspicious explosions and fires happened at strategic manufacturing plants across the country. And this was like straight out of the Anarchy for Idiots guide, like they sent 50 mail bombs to businessmen and newspaper editors. They were also suspected of sabotaging munitions and weapons factories, especially in late 1915. So everyone was like, okay, if we have a giant tank of molasses that's going to be used for making explosions, that's going to be a prime target. Then in that November as well, a steelworks in Pennsylvania that made guns for the Allies was destroyed by a fire, which was probably just an accident. I can't imagine
Mm.
why after everything we learned about fires and capitalism 2 episodes, 3 episodes ago. And then the DuPont powder mill in Delaware, there was also an explosion that killed 30 men very soon after the Pennsylvania fire. So some of them were definitely anarchist attacks, and some of them were accidents that worked out really well for anarchists, but also anarchists were blamed for them. And that
Of
led
course.
to high tensions and demand for security at the molasses tank. And after the Delaware explosion, an anarchist was arrested for threatening to blow up the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company, and also assassinating President Wilson.
Throwback.
Yeah. So authorities believed that Boston was becoming a hotbed for anarchists because a lot of them were Italian.
Oh, yeah, that
Oh.
tracks.
And Boston's North End had a massive Italian immigrant population. But Italian Americans didn't become anarchists because they were Italian, rather because they were immigrants who felt like they'd been disenfranchised and exploited by the capitalist system. Again, this is preposterous. Like, I have no idea why they would feel that way. Italians were also the most vilified immigrant group in America during the early 20th century, with stereotypes such as being lazy and violent freeloaders who refused to learn English. I saw your mic moving, and for whatever
Sorry.
reason, my brain processed it as like my desk was like falling forward, which to be
Sorry.
fair is not unrealistic with this fucking demon kitten.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah. Okay, 100-year cycle. We're still in it. Okay. I did not know this. Italians were the second most lynched population in the country at that time.
Mm.
Isn't that insane?
That is kind of wild.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear all of this stuff about like Italians being persecuted now, and you're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
But you're white.
Yeah.
But, history is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's just, especially with the term lynching, you really only assign that to like ra black racial tension at this
Hmm.
time. You don't really think of it in terms of other
Yeah.
disenfranchised minorities.
Other
Um,
xenophobic shish.
yeah, but yeah, Italians, second most lynched population in the country. So some of them turned to anarchism, which is understandable, but most, and especially those in Boston's North End, stayed out of politics entirely. They just wanted a better life. Feels really familiar.
Uh,
So ultimately, what that means is that the Boston's North End neighborhood, being largely populated by Italian immigrants, has no voice or representation within their city when a corporation comes along and decides to use the land for capitalist gains. Again, sounds familiar.
yeah. This is just making me like sad. It's fine.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing. Especially because nothing has changed. Like, that's the worst part. So it wasn't some isolated incident, what we're going to talk about. I know I haven't explicitly stated, but some of you may have guessed. It wasn't some isolated incident in an industrial zone. It wasn't workers who were killed by what's to come. It was a neighborhood, and it was one of the most crowded neighborhoods in Boston.
Mhm.
But they were just dangerous anarchists, so it doesn't really matter if anything happens to them.
That also
So
doesn't sound familiar at all.
I know.
Huh.
And also if you're worried about Italian anarchists blowing up your tank, like where do you put it? You put it where you think they live, so if they do blow it up, they're just fucking themselves over.
Hmm.
So, although the people that worked at the molasses tank were mostly Irish immigrants, figure that out.
Yep.
I mean, it's Boston, so if it's not one, it's probably the other. Am I right? Okay, I'm done. So, construction was ready in time, believe it or not. The steamer ship pulled in a day early, and 13 feet of molasses was added to the tank with no issue. So USIA was like, hell yeah, this was super successful, full steam ahead, increased molasses production, increased demands for World War II. Let's fucking go. And just for the record, 632 million pounds of gunpowder were produced by the US after joining the war in April of 1917. Which is crazy because if the Lusitania sank in 1915, it still took us 2 years to be like, okay, we'll join the war.
Yeah.
So USIA is making shit tons of money. Meanwhile, Boston's district attorney is increasingly worried about the anarchist threat, saying publicly that Boston in particular was in grave danger from disturbances from these anarchists. And again, stop me when this sounds familiar. They're pointing at all of this internal danger while the media is focused on external threats from World War One. In reality, it's probably difficult to determine which fires and explosions at munitions factories, like I said, were caused by anarchists and which were caused by, I don't know, corporate negligence, Triangle Shirtwaist Company, or an accident. 4 days after America entered the war, there was an explosion at the Edison Ammunition Corporation in Chester, Pennsylvania, which killed 116 workers, most of them also teenage girls.
Oh my God.
And there was no proof that the anarchist movement was involved, but the official statement from both the company and the police was that it was an inside job by foreign anarchists who were trying to damage the war effort. Again, most of the people killed were teenage girls. Arthur
Mhm.
did get his VP promotion, uh, but he but he also became the tank guy. So he hired extra guards specifically to guard the tank after the DA made the statement about Boston being targeted. And he was so focused on that he didn't pay attention to his employees when they started saying that something was really wrong with the tank structure. Now, there was a tank supervisor and then an assistant to the tank supervisor. And the assistant tells Arthur that the tank, even though it looked good on paper, it had been leaking molasses from every seam every single day since the very beginning.
I'm
Leaks
not
were so
surprised.
consistent that the neighborhood kids would go to the tank every day to fill up like old tin cans or buckets or cups and take it home so their parents could make them cookies. And by 1918, the leaks only got worse because the tank had reached its 2 million gallon capacity 7 times, with war demands reaching peak levels. The tank would vibrate and groan every time a new shipment was pumped in. The tank would vibrate and groan all the fucking time anyway, but especially when new shipments of molasses were added to it. The supervisor's assistant, Isaac Gonzalez, he was like terrified of something happening. You remember, uh, like back before we had the ceiling diaper, how anytime it would rain, it didn't matter what time it was, one of us would end up going to MPL to make sure that 119 wasn't flooding when it rained. Like that's what this guy did.
Yeah.
Like didn't matter. He would like in the middle of the night just be like, I gotta go check on the tank and make sure nothing's happened to it. I
Poor
know,
little anxious
but
guy.
I mean, we've
God
been there.
damn.
Don't blame him.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
wasn't molasses, but
And
yeah,
all
yeah.
he could do was spread sand around the base of the tank so the molasses like didn't flow further away from the tank. And they just made him like
Mhm.
chase the kids off. And he said it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to take care of the tank because obviously that wasn't actually his job. He had like administrative things to do and like his actual job to
Yeah.
do. So he went over his supervisor's head and went straight to tank guy Arthur to express his concerns. And he even took pieces of rusty steel from inside the tank as evidence. But Arthur was like, some leaking's normal for a tank. It's fucking huge. What do you expect, guy? And Arthur told him,
I mean, you is normal. You would expect that no leaking would
yeah,
be preferable.
exactly. And
Who cares
Arthur
about
told him that if he
normal?
knew what was good for him, he better keep those kids from trespassing on USIA property, specifically the
Mm,
Italian kids.
mhm.
One worker reported that molasses was boiling from the heat, and another said he liked leaning against the tank because the vibrations were strong enough to make his back pain go away.
Literally fucking me. I'll do anything to make my back not
And
hurt some
so,
days.
what Arthur did, he was like, you know what? I'm gonna fix this. And how he fixed it was repainting the tank brown so you couldn't see where the leaks were.
Oh my God. Okay,
Also, there's an
that's fine.
episode of Puppet History about this, which I highly recommend everyone go watch. So Gonzalez, the supervisor's assistant, he was like, "All right, I'm
Hmm.
out. I can't deal with this. The stress is
Yeah,
too much. I cannot deal with this." So instead, he enlisted in the army in the middle of World War One because that was better than dealing with the stress from this fucking tank.
that's crazy. Like, you gotta be really fucking stressed out to like go to war.
And he
Oh my
returned in
God.
March of 1919. He survived the war, made it through, returned in
Yeah,
March of
good for
1919.
him.
By which point he would have learned that his worst fears had come true, but we'll get to that.
Hmm.
Of course, as we know, World War One in our synchronous 100-year cycle that we're unfortunately trapped in, we know World War One was followed up by the Spanish flu. And Boston,
Hmm.
especially the North End, were heavily affected by it. Boston's population was hit so hard that circus tents were used to cover stacks of unburied coffins in the cemeteries because there were so few gravediggers that they couldn't keep up. Throwback to COVID. Uh, and of course, uh, the USIA.
You seem to struggle to say that
I know.
acronym every time. It's like you want
I
to say
do. Because that
USAI.
flows better.
You can say Uja, like Asia, but with a
My Google
U.
just started talking. Sorry.
U Uzia.
Usia. Yeah, but they nor Arthur gave a shit about a global pandemic. Again, this sounds horribly
Of course
familiar.
not.
They were more worried about the fact that their workers dying from the Spanish flu would disrupt their production schedules while the demands for industrial alcohol were dropping with the war being over. So there was more pressure on the company, but the pressure on the tank was actually easing up. But because USIA was so desperate to like keep profits up and to keep making money and to keep being greedy motherfuckers, they said we have to switch
Hmm.
back to grain alcohol to keep profits high. But then what happened? It was prohibition. Uh so obviously the temperance movement started in 1893. But it really found its footing during World War One because beer was brewed in places that had German like beer brewers had German heritage,
Hmm.
and World War One gave everyone a
Yeah.
very strong anti-German mindset, and so that really allowed the temperance movement and prohibition to like actually get somewhere finally. So Arthur and the USIA company knew that if the 18th Amendment was ratified, they'd have 1 year, a year grace period to distill as much grain alcohol as possible to be shipped to manufacturers before prohibition went into effect. So that meant that when the huge shipment of molasses that they scheduled for January 1919, workers were instructed that the tank had to be filled to absolute capacity.
I wonder what could happen
Yeah, I
next.
think December of that year. Oh, did it rain? Finally? Oh no, the
Did
road
it?
looks wet. So in
Oh,
December of 1918, I think Arthur had a guy reinforce the tank, quote unquote, fix it, but it was really just like adding caulk to the seams or something. Like it wasn't,
I was gonna say, did he like wrap a
yeah,
ribbon around the
essentially.
seams or something like that?
Now on January 10th, 1919, Arthur was contacted by the Boston police who told him that threatening placards had been placed on a number of buildings around the tank in response to congressional acts made prior to toughen immigration. Sounds so familiar, guys. Uh, by making it
Huh.
easier to deport anarchists, aka Italians, much in the same way
Hmm.
that it's supposed to be easier to deport MS-13 as Mexican people. Um, and that was the Immigration Act of 1918. Guys, this is so stressful.
Trying to be so cool right now. To be so cool
And
and normal.
the leader of the Italian anarchists, his name, like I mentioned earlier, Luigi Galliani, and he was considered
Mhm.
amongst the most dangerous of foreigners in the whole country. And so police
Oh
assumed
wow.
that these like posters were put up by Luigi's men. And listen to this. They were addressed, this is a quote, they were addressed to the senile fossils ruling the United States.
Yo, that's fire. That's fire.
What year is it? Yeah, it's just very like dramatic and like we're here.
Hmm.
Now, Arthur claimed to take the threat seriously, but he had laid off most of the tank's guards after the official end of World War One in November of 1918.
Hmm.
And his theory, his thinking being that if the war was over, then the molasses was at less risk. Um, which I guess kind of makes sense if you're,
Yeah,
yeah,
in one
if
way or another.
if you're not very smart. He,
Yeah. If
if
you're
you're a
old and
senile
stupid.
fossil. He also
Uh,
decided it was too expensive to hire the guards back, given the falling value of molasses. So he either
hmm
knew that anarchists wouldn't attack the tank given its position in an immigrant neighborhood, or he thought that saving money was more important than the lives of the people that lived in that neighborhood. Obviously, we cannot say one way or the other. And I really do think he was just an idiot, but I'm also not necessarily going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
Now, could be both.
could be both.
On January 12th, 1919, the Cuban ship, the Miliero, arrives with 1.3 million gallons of blackstrap molasses. 600,000
Hmm.
gallons were to be pumped to the Boston tank, and the rest of it was supposed to be taken to another facility in Brooklyn. And despite the cold
Hmm.
weather, the molasses ran really smoothly. And this is because molasses holds heat really well. And it was still warm from the ambient temperatures in Cuba. But the molasses that was
Hmm. Hmm.
already in the tank was cold from sitting in Boston in January. So it was
Hmm.
congealing.
Hmm.
And
I'm
because
so excited.
such massive amounts of both warm and cold molasses came together in one tank, A fermentation process started thanks to microscopic yeast, which produced carbon dioxide. And that is actually
Hmm.
the fermentation process is what caused the creaks and the groans and all the noises that came from the tank. And that's why they were always worse when they added new molasses to the tank.
Hmm.
So it wasn't necessarily a new thing, but the tank had never been this full before. It was filled to 48 feet and 9 inches.
Oh, I just got like the most, like, I don't know how to describe it, just like a cold chill, but like
Yeah.
through my blood,
And
just thinking about that. Okay,
I mean, if
please
the tank's
continue.
50 feet and some of that is like the lip and the lid and everything, like, it was full,
It was
full.
full, full. It was like beyond
Yeah.
capacity, my
So the
guy.
carbon dioxide from the fermentation process didn't have anywhere to go. So the pressure on the walls of the tank was increasing. So that's 26 million pounds of molasses in the tank. The captain of the Miliero, as it was pulling out of the harbor, said that he heard a noise. He heard a noise pulling out of the harbor
Mm,
loud enough, like he knew it was from the tank and it was loud enough for him to hear at the mouth of Boston Harbor. And like, yes, the tank was right on the harbor, obviously, because they had to
hmm.
put it somewhere where a ship could get to it. But
But like nothing should be
no.
making that loud of a noise.
Now,
LOL.
the tank would sit there for 3 days while this fermentation process ran its course, culminating in the breaking point, January 15th, 1919. It's a beautiful, mild 40-degree day, which is pretty warm for Boston in January.
Yeah,
It's
I'd say.
lunchtime. Everyone is on their lunch break. People are like the fire department, they're all in the lunchroom eating their like peanut butter jelly Sammies or whatever the fuck people ate.
Deadass thought you were gonna say eating their curds and whey.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know why I thought you were gonna say.
A sound echoes through the North End neighborhood, not unlike a machine gun, and it's heard by everyone. And then there's another sound described as something that would come from a wounded beast.
Oh!
The first sound were the rivets popping out,
Oh, I was kind of
and the
hoping that would
second
be it.
sound was the steel plates grinding together as the tank gave way. A wall of molasses, 25 feet high and 160 feet wide, descended upon the north end. And because the pressure inside the tank was centralized, the wall erupted in all directions, aided by the top of the tank
Hmm.
essentially falling straight down as the walls buckled. So it pushed the molasses out with even more force in all directions. This wall traveled at 35 miles an hour.
Damn. How could they tell?
Oh, I'll come back to that in a little bit. The thousands of rivets that burst and the broken steel plates, these all essentially became projectiles, causing their own damage. While the
Yep.
molasses itself flattened some buildings and completely displaced others, the firehouse was lifted from its foundation and swept into the harbor. Freight cars were
Okay.
crushed under the weight of the molasses, and every living creature was smothered.
Uh-huh.
The flood carried
Uh-huh.
all this debris with it too, so people not only became trapped in the molasses, but they were also stabbed or crushed by things within it. When it
Hmm.
settled, it was chest deep in some places and averaged like 2 to 3 feet generally. Um, one man, there was this website that had like all just these different accounts from people, and there were a lot, but I only went with a few. Martin Clougherty, he was a boxing referee for Irish and Italian boxing matches. He was taking a nap and he woke to his sister Bridget screaming that something terrible had happened to the tank. And before he could even get out of bed, he felt his entire— Can you hear this? She has her like ball
No.
with the bell in it. It's pretty cute.
Oh, cute.
Before he could even get out of bed, he felt the entire thing overturn as the molasses wave broke through the walls of his home. He said it felt like falling overboard as molasses filled his nose and mouth, and he realized he was drowning. He said he felt himself slide downwards, so he began like flailing to get his head above the liquid. Now, as someone in the boxing world, obviously he was a strong guy. So he was able essentially to like get his bearings and like tread the molasses, which is probably really fucking
Crazy.
hard. And he rode the wave out of
Yeah.
his house into the street where he would be left standing chest deep in the substance with debris pressing on him. And he saw his entire house being swept away and smashed against the elevated rail track. And he saw something he could use as a raft, which was better. I mean, yeah, he was just standing there, but it was so hard to walk through. Um, so he found something he could use as a raft, which was actually his bed. And he saw a hand pop out of the molasses, and he made his way over to it right as his sister's head popped out, following her hand. So he pulled her out, and then she vomited everywhere, molasses just everywhere. Um, and then Martin like left his sister somewhere safe and went on to look for their mother and their brother. And they would later find out that their mother was killed in the house when it collapsed, and their brother would die in an asylum later that year where he had been placed because of the trauma. Specifically about their mom. Like, he never really got over that. One boy was actually behind the tank when it failed. He was one of the kids who would like collect molasses from the leaks. His dad, whose name was Giuseppe, which is a great
Oh
name.
my God, Giuseppe. It's a great
His dad
name.
was watching from the window of their home, saw his kid and two others be consumed by the flood only moments before the wall hit their house, and he was thrown to the floor and knocked unconscious. His son's body wouldn't be found for 5 days, where rescuers found his body behind a railroad car. And it seemed like the car had been picked up by the wall, which then careened into him and then
Hmm.
smashed him against a wall, where his body was completely broken and disfigured.
A whole
He
ass
could only be
railroad car.
identified by his
A
sweater.
whole. No,
Yeah.
homie.
The elevated rail, like I said, a train of midday passengers had just passed by the tank right as it burst. Now the train was going at
Uh,
20 miles an hour, and the trestle buckled and the train began to tip, but the brakeman, his name was Lehman, saw what was happening and he was able to get the train just past the danger zone by 3 car lengths. So like he he stopped the train 3 car lengths before the collapse had stopped, like where the wave had took it out.
mhm.
But he did not stop there. This guy's a fucking he's the hero of the hour.
Hell yeah,
He was
Lehman.
like, another train is gonna be coming. Oh my God. So he got out of the train and crawled along the broken part of the trestle, like climbed it and then climbed up to where the track was still intact and sprinted down it until he saw the other train, and then he stood in the middle of the tracks and waved the train down, which is like 20 feet off the ground. Would not be me.
Yeah. Jesus fuck.
And the engineer stops and he just says, "The track is down almost to the street. You can't go any further. The goddamn molasses tank burst." And I feel like this was pointed out in something that I was listening to as well. If they are like that casual about it, like the goddamn tank burst, they're driving by it every
Yeah.
day. They're probably waiting for it to happen. Like they're just like waiting for
Yeah.
something to go wrong. Um,
No wonder he was able to stop the train. He
he's
probably was like, he was probably
practicing
preparing
every time they
for it,
pass
you
a tank,
know?
he like practices. Yeah.
Yeah. For all this time, goddamn.
Um, Firefighters, nurses, and doctors soon arrived on the scene to help. However they could, but they were all horrified. One doctor arrived about an
Yeah.
hour after the initial burst. This was Dr. George McGrath. He had been working nearby, heard the news, pulled on his fucking rubber fishing waders like a pro, and
Okay.
takes his assistant and heads over. And when they arrived, so like an hour after dispersal, it was still knee deep, and people were still just having a hard
Hmm.
time like reaching people, getting to people because it was so hard to walk through. Many of the victims actually died after being swept into the harbor, and succumbed to like pneumonia and shit after being recovered from the water.
Yeah.
Bodies could only be identified after they had been washed because their eyes, ears, mouths, noses were all filled. This is how Mommy Clowerty was found in the aftermath of the destruction of her house by George McGrath, actually.
Is mommy not like
No, I just called
Mamie?
her Mommy Clowerty.
Oh,
That's not her
it's like,
name. Yeah, just the mom.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
oh, yeah, yeah,
It
yeah, yeah,
only
yeah.
referred to her as
Yep.
Mrs. Clowerty, no first name. So I was just like, okay, Mommy it is.
Okay.
The USIA was very quick to place the blame elsewhere. While everyone
Of
was
course.
rescuing people, they said, okay, time to hold a press conference. We don't need to worry about helping or anything. We'll hold a, ow.
No. Gotta do
Yeah,
some
they held a press
PR
conference with the mayor,
real quick.
and while they described the event as an accident, they also very deliberately used the word explosion. Like they couldn't cover their own asses quickly enough. And then their attorney flat out lied and said it was outside influences and that it was most likely anarchists who planted the bomb and that the USIA knew for a fact that the tank was not weak. So like several lies. And he even said that the tank was inspected minutes before and that it was structurally sound, which is yeah.
Minutes before, bitch. Yeah, okay.
And he also said that molasses didn't ferment.
Okay.
Survivors were taken to a relief station where their clothing was cut off because it had to be, and nurses could remove molasses from breathing passages. They also cut off the clothing of the people who didn't survive because they were so unidentifiable, they couldn't even tell like gender based on clothes and just how they looked laying there. They just had to get real personal. The entire hospital became soaked with molasses itself, as well as the doctors and nurses. Within an hour, there was so. Ow, squid, you absolute fucking demon. Get out of here. She pounced on top of the cord and then bit my foot.
Oh, good.
Ugh.
It's very respectable of
Yeah,
you, Squid. Very good. Very
absolute
nice.
shithead. Yeah, there was so much molasses congealing in the hallways of the hospital that they couldn't move the stretchers, and the nurses had to start mopping the floors every hour to like try and control its spread. But it was just everywhere. It was all over the city, especially because people would like take the train to work or take the train to the neighborhood to
Mm-hmm.
help rescue, and then they would go home covered in it, and it was spread fucking everywhere. Um, by the end of the day, only 9 fatalities have been counted, but a lot of people were still missing. It was so hard to find and recover people. Uh, this beat out Woodrow Wilson's end of World War I negotiations and prohibition becoming law on January 17th for headline news across the country. Within 24 hours, the molasses had hardened to the point that it had to be broken up with chisels, shovels, pickaxes, and then washed away with seawater to loosen it up. And the fire department,
Like
yeah,
literally Candyland.
and the fire department had to use hydraulic pumps to siphon the loosened molasses out of like cellars from uh like businesses and houses on the street. Um, while city and rescue workers worked endlessly to clean up the neighborhood, the USIA provided absolutely no assistance, oh my God, until they were publicly shamed into doing so, because if they cleaned up the molasses, then they were admitting guilt, apparently.
I mean, everyone was
Yeah, and
helping,
it's
you
your
know?
fucking tank. Even if it was an
Yeah.
accident, that they could have, like, even if it
Like,
was a freak
be
accident and
normal.
everything, like, was up to code and whatever, they,
Yeah. If it had actually been attacked
yeah,
by
then they
anarchists,
should,
like if they
yeah,
say that, then
yeah.
they should be helping.
So they're just being so shady. Uh, yeah, molasses was spread all over subway platforms, seats, public phones, um, workers' houses. And everyone just said, thank God it didn't happen in summer because more kids would have been killed while
Ah,
playing outside. And then the rats and the insects would have been attracted and would have made it even more unbelievable and unbearable because not only would they
mm-hmm.
be attracted, but they'd also probably get stuck themselves. And then you'd have like rotting fucking rats in the stuck molasses that you're trying to get through.
Yeah, you'd have like an explosion of Spanish flu. I mean, it was
Yeah.
already pretty bad, but you know what I mean.
When a judge released the report following the inquest to assign blame for the disaster, he didn't say it was USIA's fault. He didn't say it was anarchists. He blamed the people of
Hmm.
Boston for its failure to adequately fund and staff the appropriate departments.
Okay, I see what he's getting at.
It's still the company's fault. Yeah.
Maybe not the time.
He did
Maybe not the
eventually
time.
place most of the blame on the company, but noted that the only punishable crime was manslaughter through negligence because the tank was insufficient and met neither legal nor structural requirements. So the Boston DA presented the report to a grand jury, but they decided there was insufficient evidence for the criminal negligence indictment, so no criminal charges were ever filed.
Hmm.
Then USIA doubled down and made a brief statement that the tank was blown up, but their refusal to take responsibility and keep pointing fingers at anarchists led to two of their molasses steamers vanishing without a trace on their way from the Caribbean to New England. No distress signals, nothing.
Okay.
And it's believed that sudden explosions would be enough to take out the ships without warning. And then a month later, their Brooklyn molasses
Hmm.
facility was destroyed by a fire and ultimately closed down. And it's generally accepted that this was the anarchists saying, fine, if you're gonna fucking blame us, we'll give you a reason to. Unlike, good for
Yeah,
them,
hell
honestly.
yeah.
And then fucking Arthur P. Gelb, whatever his fucking name is,
Yep.
was promoted
Gelb.
again within a year after the flood.
Oh my fucking God.
But Bostonians decided
Yep.
that if a grand jury wasn't gonna do anything, they fucking would. So 119
Good.
separate claims were filed against the company for a full trial before jury, and they stuck with the anarchy angle. Their lawyer said it only failed because anarchists dropped a bomb inside. Which, okay, my first thing,
Yeah.
my
Okay.
first
How,
point would
bitch?
be, how can you fit a fucking bomb in there? It's full to the fucking brim.
How could they even get up there?
The plaintiffs actually won, which is great. They had testimony from the makers of the steel
Yep.
plates who admitted that they were not as thick as they should have been, but no one complained, so they didn't think there was an issue. Additionally, they had explosive experts who were sailors that worked in ordnance during World War One, who testified that they'd heard
Mm-hmm.
sounds like thunder when the tank collapsed, but it was absolutely not the sound of explosives. And they'd heard explosive on the front line, so they should know. Like that was literally their argument.
Yeah.
Um, and then Arthur got on the stand and he admitted that he didn't have the steel examined or tested, relying only on the steel company's reputation. And both sides had MIT scientists, I think, come in and explain, or the prosecution definitely had MIT scientists come in. And they explained to the court that the steel shouldn't have exceeded 18,000 pounds per square inch. But on the day of the disaster, they calculated it would have been 31,000. And that's probably,
Jeez. In fact, it
I
stood
know,
up to that much, and it shouldn't have been
for more
16,000.
than
A
3 days.
miracle.
And I assume in that
Crazy.
math is where they were able to figure out that like it was 35 miles an hour or whatever when they were like doing all those calculations.
Yeah.
The attorney, yeah.
Mathers be
The
mathin'.
attorney, I can't remember what his name was, but it sounded like he was ready for this and he was enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
He spent two
Hell yeah.
entire years calling witnesses to the stand and making it hella dramatic. Like witnesses were like mothers who watched their kids drown and like widows whose husbands like what like found every single person and like really just made it soap opera worthy. And the defense attorney just
Hell yeah.
said at least they died quickly and argued that the two children who died were trespassing on company property.
So they
Yeah,
deserved to die?
exactly.
Okay.
So
Freaky.
USIA was found fully responsible and ended up paying $10 million to the victims, the city, and businesses, which doesn't really
Ta-da.
sound like a lot. Um, oh, I don't actually think I ever said it turned out that there were 21 deaths.
Oh, okay.
So like, I don't know, 10 million doesn't really sound like a whole lot. But the original offer was 4 million. But like I said, this prosecuting attorney, he was like ready to go to war. And
Later
he
on
said
thick.
that if they didn't come up to a better agreement, they'd start a damages trial next, and that they'd be stuck doing the same thing all over again because at this point the trial had technically been going on for 4.5 years just to establish that the
Mm-hmm.
company was responsible. So he was like, "All right, if you're only going to give 4 million, then I'll just get another trial going for damages, and we can spend another 4.5 years doing this." So they settled on the 10 million.
Oh yeah. That's one
Yeah.
way to fucking play it, my guy.
And the flood ended, sorry, this is now known as the Great Molasses Flood, and it ended through,
Mm-hmm. Like at this
well,
point
for us,
in
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The flood ended 300 years of molasses trade history in Boston. Sugar replaced it as a sweetener, and cheaper methods of producing industrial alcohol were found, which is why I said at the top, we don't use it for that anymore. But like the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, this also had an impact on construction standards. Boston required that calculations from engineers and architects had to be filed with their blueprints and plans, which soon became standard for the whole country. And much like the Triangle Fire, it's one big lesson in the fact that corporations are willing to risk the lives of their workers for disenfranchised populations if it means they'll save a little money. And that's a lesson
Yay.
we are still living every fucking day. Um, and then there's a quote unquote ghost of molasses, and it's reported that
Oh,
Boston's North
Jesus.
End smelled like molasses for decades, well into the 1960s, especially in the basements of those buildings. Um,
I
yeah.
believe it.
So, to answer my initial question, what does Boston Harbor taste like? Not just tea, but sweet tea.
Oh, that's good. I thought you were gonna say something that like a non-joke.
Oh, dead
Dead
bodies.
bodies or something like that.
No, because I was like, well, there's
It's gonna
already
be like,
tea in
oh
it,
geez.
and now there's molasses in it. So, sweet
Yeah.
tea. Let's go.
It's like
Yeah,
it's
because that's how
bittersweet tea.
I kind of said they like washed it away with seawater, but like they literally just washed everything
Hmm.
into the harbor to clean it up. Like, which I don't really think is
Hmm.
cleaning it up. That's just moving the filth somewhere else.
Hey, we still that's how we clean up messes. We just
It
move the
sure
filth
is.
somewhere else.
Humans are messy, messy bitches.
Yeah, we do be making
I
mess.
guess if we weren't, then we wouldn't be archaeologists because we'd have nothing to look at.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
true.
Hmm.
I feel for the archaeologists of the
Yeah.
future.
It's gonna smell
It's
like
gonna suck.
molasses. Yep,
Ah,
and that's it. That's the Great Molasses Flood of 1919.
what a journey. Seriously.
Anarchy, prohibition, slavery, like
Yeah,
boy howdy, we sure just had a little bit of everything coming in here.
I liked the part where the company was just like being so dumb and complacent and just like, yeah, we'll just do whatever and uh all these fucking immigrants just ruining everything. Let's just make it harder for them to A, get jobs and B,
Are you talking
live.
about in 1919 or are you talking about right now?
Yes.
Oh, it's great. It's not depressing at all.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go make some
No.
soup and like cry a little bit, maybe. Or at least be depressed about this.
I'm gonna go I'm gonna go take a fat shit.
Shocker.
Okay. Please don't put that in. I'm begging you.
Okay,
Okay,
Well,
bye.
that
bye.
concludes this week's broadcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you wish to stay in touch, reach out to us at broadcastfromthebelfry@gmail.com or stalk us on Instagram at broadcastfromthebelfry. Again, I hope you've enjoyed our little show. Please rate and review. And until next week, stay